You're absolutely wrong. Naan is the best, man. It's so fluffy, so soft, so chewy. I mean, like, she knows what I'm talking about.
I don't know, man. Seriously, like, naan is, it's a bougie thing, right? Roti is every day. It's got that grit of Punjab. My dad used to eat it every single day and never got tired of it. Naan is something that was brought in like the mid 90s by the aunties that like dyed their hair orange and thought they were westernized, right? No, that's not my thing. And honestly, like, what do you know? You don't have my taste bud.
I've lived in Millwoods for over 20 years now, man. I think I know what I'm talking about. Like, you live in my backyard. We've been neighbors for so long. I've been immersed in so much of your culture, the Indian weddings, been visiting the Gurdwaras. I think I know what I'm talking about, man.
I get what you're saying, but honestly, you're bugging, man. Roti is healthy. There's no trans, there's no saturated fats. Have you seen my dad's physique? He's still slender. I occasionally have naan when it's just the only option. And look at me, I don't have the physique of my dad, and that's because of naan. What about you, man? Aren't you on a health kick?
My mouth yearns for that garlic naan, man. I just want to stuff it in my mouth and just dip it in the smoothest of butter chickens.
Seriously, butter chicken? We're talking about butter chicken. We were talking about Indian food and you bring butter chicken into the equation? None of us like butter chicken. Butter chicken sucks, man. You're not one of us. No, never. Not on your best day.
Everyone, let's pitch.
You know, it's looking a bit light.
We didn't have a server. I had to go up and order. If I had full service, then yeah, I would tip 15%. No.
Yeah, but look how much you're enjoying it.
Okay, fair. 15% now.
Southeast Edmonton, more specifically, Mill Woods. That's where I grew up. My parents had seen this neighborhood and realized that it would be a perfect spot to raise a family of 4, with hopes that their son would become a smart-mouthed Filipino food writer, or a nurse. It has also led me to Edmonton's Little India to visit the Spice Center with my old childhood foodie friend, Ramneek, and that's me, Sal. We are joined with a contributor of the Edmonton Heritage Maps, Pushali Mitra, to tell us more about the establishment as well as the history of Little India.
So yeah, this place became, it started with spice and groceries and all your ritual items that you would need for different life events, right? Like be it wedding, welcoming a new baby, or saying goodbye to a family member, right? So this became like the cultural hub to get all your stuff under one banner. And they also experimented with a lot of like DVDs and videos and wedding tapes and those kinds of bits and pieces. And it has been the cultural landmark for a very long time. In this complex, you will also be able to see fabric stores, traditional Indian garments like saris, salwars, and those kinds of bits and pieces that goes with the cultural everyday lifestyles. And then I think this place is also associated with the development of Millwoods, right? Because in the mid-70s, 80s, that was the time when Millwoods was being developed and housing prices were really comparatively low compared to other parts of the city. And this was a beautiful place with playgrounds, and lots of South Asian families chose this place, which is the traditional Kapachese territory, to call their home, right? And there's a lot of like harmony about this Millwoods mosaic, as we call it, right? And this place being so close to Millwoods kind of like survived and thrived on the basics that many South Asians need, and beyond the South Asian community, you can see a lot of new immigration processes that gets into the country, and a lot of new shops like Japanese and Korean shops opening on the other quarter. But this has always been the staple, I would say, informally since 1970s and more formally since 1990s. This quarter has been very special for newcomers.
So it felt like home in a way.
I think so, I think so. It just like walking through some of the grocery aisles where you see food products that you have grown up with, right?
Yeah.
Eating, like your morning would start with a cup of chai and a Parle-G biscuit, right? And you don't see that, like, yeah, you can get that in the retail stores, but I think these days, but like when I came here, and maybe when y'all's parents migrated here, you couldn't get that in Walmart.
Now we find ourselves heading a bit south of Little India to try some of my favorite Indian dishes from Zyka. We also explore how Ramneek became one of Edmonton's most talked about food reviewers.
Do you ever have naan all the time with the saucy stuff, or do you just wrap it with everything?
Do I wrap my naan with everything? Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. Garlic naan. This is actually something that you introduced to me. I just used to have buttered naan. And then when we came here, the last time, a year and a half ago, you asked for garlic naan. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. It was like this new decadent thing that I was introduced to. But before that, it was just buttered naan.
Is it super decadent? I feel
It's
like
pretty
garlic naan's
decadent.
like very.
I think it's pretty decadent. Like if I was to kill a vampire, I would use this.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say is your relationship with Southeast Edmonton? You've lived here for most of your life?
I have, yeah.
All of your life?
It's my heart, man. I remember in the 90s just growing up in the Crescent in front of Saca School, and we would play hockey every day, and we would pretend to be guys like Patrick Waugh and Joe Sakic and John Van Beesbrook, and then on Fridays we would always end at 9 or 8:55 so we could watch TGIF and watch like Family Matters and Boy Meets World. No, those are magical
Oh, yeah.
times.
No.
That's my
Yeah.
heart. When I drive by it, I just travel back 30 years. That's my childhood. It's a wonderful time. Those are the wonder years.
So what got you into food writing and reviewing?
Right? So when I was like 18, 19, right when I graduated from high school, I wanted to write a script for a movie, right? Or I wanted to write a novel that would gradually become a movie. That was always my dream. And it never happened. I didn't really believe in myself. I just didn't think that I had the skill. And then the years just pile on, right? You're like, I got too old.
Yeah.
And when I was around 31, I went to Victoria, and we were going to a lot of restaurants. So it was my wife and a friend of mine, and at each restaurant I was taking photos. And we randomly came across a cousin, not cousin, family friend. You know how Asians call everyone a cousin, right?
Yep.
So it was a family friend, and she noticed that I was taking photos of every meal. And she's like, why are you doing this? I'm like, it's for posterity. It's also because if I go to Victoria again, I'll know what I had if I go to these restaurants. She's like, you should write about these restaurants. You should write about your experience. I'm like, no. I'm like, why am I going to do that? She's like, she calls me Rocky. She's like, Rocky, you're young. At the time I was, not anymore, right? But I was 31 at the time. And she's like, you're young. You might develop a following. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. And then when we came back, like a month or two later, I lost my job, right? And I had a lot of time on my hands. And my wife told me to join Instagram. So I joined Instagram. I started posting photos of the meals I was eating. And it was just like hashtag food this, hashtag yeg food this. And eventually it transitioned into a few sentences here and there, nothing special. That gradually transitioned into paragraphs. And I had a meal at Zyka sister restaurant, so Tiffin, right? And I had the Tiffin 3. It was Kashmiri lamb, fenugreek chicken, and South Indian chicken. And I'm like, this is amazing. It brought me back to Indian food. I was like a lapsed Indian food fan.
Okay.
And I posted about it, and I'm like, this is the Indian food I needed when I was growing up, not the vegetarian stuff that I was eating, not the meager scraps from the field, right? My cousin took offense to that, and she's like, oh, our ancestral village is not meager scraps from the field, and she was so offended. And I told her that I didn't really care about her opinion, that she was expendable to me, right? And just offended her. But then I'm like, I just created a rift with my own family member. Is anybody benefiting from these short reviews? So I threw out a feeler. I'm like, do you benefit from my reviews, right? Do you want me to continue? And I got an overwhelming positive response. So I started my own page,
And then in like 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe like 2 months, I'm not even sure about the timeline, I wrote a review for Jollibee. And it was just an honest review, right? Somebody had requested that I review this new fast food chain that had opened here.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it went viral. Like I went to watch The Joker with my wife, and I was just checking my phone, and like I had like 120 notifications. Like, what's going on? And it was just this fierce backlash, just drenched in racism that I've never heard before in my life, right?
Yeah.
And from that point on, I developed, like, it wasn't the biggest following, but that's how the following developed.
Being Filipino, it got crazy to me seeing that you made it to news over in Philippines. Even my aunts over in Philippines knew who you were. They knew because of the review, and that because of the Facebook algorithm, it was like friends. After I become friends with you, and even my aunts here, and just like, oh yeah, I know who you are as a person, just because they made that review at Jollibee. I know that the fact that when I do go to the Philippines, I'll only eat Jollibee food because it's actually really good over there.
So it's like
it's a great option there, but
it's like Peroni beer in Italy. Here it's okay, but in Italy it's so refreshing.
Going back to your role as a reviewer, received any death threats?
Yeah, I've received. No, you get threats. It happens. People are passionate about restaurants, but I don't understand the need for violent threats. But you know, in the immortal words of Billy Joel, I'm still around.
Much like Ramneek, I have taken some heat from my food reviews. This may be one of the times a review has caught up to me.
You're the fat Sal that left this review of my restaurant? The pancake was mush. Try cutting it with a pointed butter knife they gave me. More bits were in the dipping sauce than in my actual mouth. Most Korean places will serve banchan, which are small dishes of food that come out before appetizers, if not even when you get water. Hanjan is not like most Korean places. I also cheesed that we didn't get scissors for the japchae. NDM, not the move. The reviews are pretty brutal, but it's all good, man.
Thanks.
Let's eat. Yeah, so since your review, that really helped us, especially in the beginning. It was tough to hear, but we definitely needed to make some improvements. Yeah, like side dishes, before we're like, oh, like so much work, but it is like part of the Korean culture, so.
Yeah. So what's usually in the seafood pancake, the pajon?
Pajon, yeah, so it's just like a flour mix as the base, and then we have your seafood. So we got like shrimp, squid, octopus, and then we just have the green onion.
Is fried chicken fried twice? Because I heard that's a Korean thing, that you fry chicken twice.
Yeah, so this one, we don't fry it twice, but we batter twice.
Okay, got it.
So a lot of like the ones in Korea, they do fry it twice, but I think that's more like a logistical thing, so that like when they get the order in, they can like have it like hot, but like quickly as well. So they'll like pre-fry it, so when the order comes in, they can just fry for like another minute and it's good to go.
Okay.
Any stories about just being in this neighborhood, or has there been any other influences of having Korean restaurants pop up here during like your time here? I know there's been a few, but it's just weird to see just strictly like these two cultures
right
in the same spot.
But like our history doesn't go like too long here, and I think like with like the Indian community too, we kind of came at like the same like timeline, and then with like immigrants like coming to a new city, like they can't like afford to go to like the best neighborhoods and things like that. So yeah, this place is actually like quite industrial, which is why it is like cheaper rent. There's like people that don't have too much startup capital to start. And then, but now like I think there's more like restaurants and food and beverage and industrial stuff in this neighborhood now.
I feel like we've talked about this before. There was another restaurant up the road where they also had great noodles.
No, 원정가.
The noodles there were incredible. There was no hanjan yet.
I know,
this is like over in 2005, 7.
Yeah, that was like one of the OG like Korean spots in Edmonton.
Yeah,
so I think like
it's really good.
Even like 6-7 years ago, before we opened, there's probably only like 4 or 5 Korean restaurants in the whole city. But now they're like everywhere.
So how have you felt Korean food has evolved since those OGs?
Korean history in Edmonton doesn't go back too far. it was like, especially like, we're like a prime example. Like, my family came here about 20 years ago. Yeah, the Canadian government was like recruiting like certain like tradespeople, like welders, engineers, etc. So a lot of Korean people that did come to Edmonton came for that job opportunity. But now, especially with like media influence and like foodie culture getting big, a lot of people, like Korean people, are getting into more like the food scene.
Yeah.
And especially, I think like Gamnam style, like Sai. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. But that was like, I think what started like the whole like Korean like global influence.
Just that one song?
Just that one song, I think like that kind of put us like on the map.
That was like 13, 14 years ago, right?
Around there, yeah. Definitely more than 10 years ago.
So that song inspired your restaurant dreams?
No, but I think it definitely helped us like when we opened. I think if like the Korean like media wasn't so hot, like especially when we opened, we definitely wouldn't have like the success we have today. So, and we always talk about like the timing was like so good for us. So we actually opened this because in 2016, that's when like the oil prices crashed. So, like my dad being an engineer, like he got laid off. My sister, also an engineer, she got laid off. And we're like, oh, like what does her family do for income? And then my mom, like she's a really great cook. And I've been in like the coffee industry for a really long time. So that's kind of where Hanjan came from. So Hanjan is kind of like a place supposed to be like cafe, bar, restaurant where people can just come, enjoy like a drink, have some food, and then have a nice conversation. So,
And what does Hanjan mean?
So Hanjan means like a drink in Korean. So here, how you would say like, oh, you want to grab a drink, or you want to grab a cup of coffee? You say the same thing in Korean, like, oh, 한잔 할래?
On our final stop, Ramneek and I remember our old friend and Millwood's legend, Jasprit Pandher, over a nostalgic meal at Homestyle Donair.
I'm late to the game when it comes to donairs. Like, I found out about them in 2001 or 2. Alberta College, a friend of mine went to a donair shop, and he was asking me if I wanted one. I'm like, I don't know what it is. And when I saw it, I'm like, what is this like monstrosity, right? It looks like it's just filled with beef. Like, how do you even finish it in one sitting? And then around like 2008, 2009, I came here. I got a donair for myself and my wife, and we were just blown away. And then I became like this fiend for donairs, like having them every single week.
Yeah.
So Homestyle is responsible for my donair love.
Yeah. Yeah, you know who would have loved this is our old friend Jeff.
After he passed away, I found out about things like him fighting for equal wages for international students so they can actually live here, make livable wages, and go to school, right, and not be living in like poverty.
Yeah.
He fought for that, made it happen, and then never told anyone. Like, he just didn't want it.
Hearing that he was working with Trudeau, and then he'd message me. He's like, "Hey, do you want Trudeau to say like hi to your parents or give him like an anniversary, like, hey, congrats on your like 30-year anniversary?" And I'm just kind of like, "You can just get that?" It's like, "Oh yeah, it's just like down the hall." And I'm like,
he was talking about how he can do something for you, right?
Yeah,
not
all
like,
the
hey,
time.
look how much
Never.
power I have.
"Oh no,
right?
never. It's never like that."
Yeah, it was
but
never
like,
like
yeah,
that.
like even I remember when I was volunteering for Sohi then, I remember seeing him, and he was running the show.
Yeah.
So me coming in there just like, "Hey, I'm here to volunteer for this." And then he just basically like pushed everyone out of the way to be like, "Zao, how are you? Oh, thank you for helping." And I'm like, this guy, seeing him push through people and just knowing him as a younger kid that was just like trying to beat at like NES. And
But
seeing
when
him
you
in
say
these
he pushed
powerful
through people, it was like affectionately, right?
Oh yeah, no, he wasn't like punching.
Get out of my way.
But he was
right?
just,
No.
just like, "Oh hey, this is like my friend." So just like I'm always happy to help. I'm always happy to work whatever he has. Right? He was always just like such a solid dude in that sense, and he never forgets the people that he's ever forgot.
You know, I've gotten to 38 without experiencing significant death in my life, right? And then to lose like somebody that you consider to be your little brother, it's tough, man. Yeah.
No, definitely it's tough, especially he had experienced like such a full life.
Yeah.
He reached for the stars and he got them, right?
He did, yeah. Just this inspiring life. When we do our radio show, we both really like 70s Bollywood, and there's this film from the early 70s called Anand,
about this guy who has terminal cancer, right? But he wants to live life to the fullest, right? And he's never cynical. He wants to make the most of his life. He wants to be the best friend possible. Just loved this film. And we would talk about it. I didn't know he was living the movie, man, right? Because he was real life on it.